Welcome back. Clearly, Rudy Giuliani was a major focus of today's impeachment hearing. Carol Lee, Michael Steele, and Neera Tanden are back. I'm going to play one more sort of longer soundbite here from Ivanovich. Guys, it's the one right underneath. I guess it doesn't have a number on it, but it's Ivanovich on all of her contacts with Rudy.
With respect to Mayor Giuliani, I have had only minimal contact with him, a total of 3, none related to the events at issue. I do not understand Mr. Giuliani's motives for attacking me, nor can I offer an opinion on whether he believed the allegations he spread about me. Clearly, no one at the State Department did. What I can say is that Mr. Giuliani should have known those claims were suspect, coming as they reportedly did from individuals with questionable motives and with reason to believe that their political and financial ambitions would be stymied by our anti-corruption policy in Ukraine.
Carol Lee, there is a missing piece here, which is where did Rudy Giuliani find out who he should go to in Ukraine to help do these things? We think Paul Manafort played a role in this weird go-between with Sean Hannity and all this business, but that was an unknown that did not get surfaced today. Is what sent Giuliani down this rabbit hole?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Who sent
the
him
question.
there?
Who sent him there? How did it get started? And then, how was it, once it got started, how did they figure out how to execute it? What were all the connections that were made? And that's perhaps something that we're going to learn through the investigation.
Yeah, there's been some odd contact, right, between Manafort and Hannity, Michael Steele, and then the question is, it does look like somebody, like Paul Manafort somehow got to Giuliani, hey, these guys know how to stir the pot. Go meet these guys in Ukraine.
Right. And the question, I guess, is whether we seem to have sort of conflated, in the president's mind at least, these things that are presumably a financial interest of his attorney and things that are his personal interest, the conspiracy theory that Ukrainians were behind election interference and his desire to find dirt on the Bidens. And was Rudy Giuliani kind of playing him for his own financial advantage? And who else may have been involved?
Kind of looks like
why
that.
not?
Well, it's funny. It's like he's some international, just lobbyist or arms dealer. Oh, you need an energy contract, and I'll give you a security contract. The president needs a Biden investigation. Giuliani seemed to have 3 or 4 bizarre Ukrainian clients all converging at the same time.
There is a through line, right? So, number one, Rudy Giuliani's business partners are under indictment now. Right? So, we
may find out more if we were talking about this, if Fruman or Parnas ends up flipping.
Because they could, and for all we know, they are sharing information. We don't know. The other thing we should be really clear about is this crazy crowd strike theory was a theory that Russian military intelligence was promoting. Okay, so the president is engaged in Russian military intelligence. The president, or in the theories promoted by Russian military intelligence, and Rudy Giuliani has business partners connected to Ukrainian oligarchs who are engaged in criminal behavior, and we may see a deep connection between those two elements. We don't know yet, but we may well see. It is an oddity, the president's behavior when it comes to Russia writ large, that has been a through line of this entire presidency. And we saw it again on Wednesday with his behavior on Turkey, related to Turkey and Syria.
No, he cannot. It is the weirdest thing is it.
Or maybe
Michael
it's
Steele,
not so weird.
No, I know. Is that again? And I think that, you got to ask this question, which is why is it that the president is implementing Vladimir Putin's 2 biggest foreign policy priorities?
Right. And I don't know the answer to that.
Nobody has an answer, especially when the president's own advisors have all asked him not to do that.
Right. And explain to him why it's not a good idea, why it will hurt America's national interest. And he does it anyway. Yeah. I do think it's interesting that the investigation of Giuliani is being done by real prosecutors in a court rather than congressional investigators, because I think that gives them a lot more tools, and it may be a lot better way to find out what's going on here.
Trump-appointed prosecutors, too, over there in SDNY.
Yeah.
That makes it's going to make it even more
credible.
Yeah, and the thing that I found interesting in the Wall Street Journal story in particular is just what you were talking about earlier, is the mixing of this. You get this sense that Giuliani was trying to make money for himself, but also, and by doing that, was kind of feeding the president on this other issue.
He seems to have a financial problem, right?
Yes,
Rudy,
absolutely. Yeah. And so and if you look at what his associates were doing in these meetings to try to get this Poland to Ukraine pipeline built, they were also raising Biden in 2016 in these same meetings. And so it's all kind of mixed, and you wonder what the motivation and whether the president was aware of what Giuliani was trying to do by piggybacking on him.
I would say, though, that we have no indication that this really all originates with Rudy Giuliani when it comes to CrowdStrike and all those issues. I mean, it seems like there are many possible sources, but it may well have been raised in direct conversations with Vladimir Putin, for all we know.
Well,
but it's not entirely clear.
This gets at. I think the Democrats. I understand why they want to limit it,
Right.
but I think it's perfectly legitimate that I don't know why they have not tried to figure out a way that they should try to get those Putin phone calls.
So I think the challenge of this, just to say, which I am all for getting these Putin phone calls, but it just
Getting that hard route.
the courts
No, it is.
to make this go a lot longer.
It is. It's the court fight. Carol, Michael, and Neera, thank you very much. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.